Changa, so I would love to be addressed as Changa moving forward. We are meeting this morning. I think the nation is mourning the loss of our king. We are weakened by this situation. But I guess that we should find some strength somehow, that we need to keep on fighting and soldiering on. We are also coming to this conference, which is an annual one, having lost many of our members before the COVID regulations and even during. We have lost many of our members during COVID as well. But we have taken a decision that we cannot stop living. We had to push for this conference to be during this time. This is our commitment that we have made from the day one when we established FABCO. So as much as we know that we are facing a huge risk, we feel comforted that we are coming to this conference with our heads up, our chests out, knowing very well that we are winning the battle. We are coming to this conference with now an established farm wholesale market. This is a vision that was founded by the members of FABCO in 2013, and it was endorsed by the First General Assembly in 2014. So every year we carry the mandate that we should have our own General Assembly and a conference annually, just to renew our relationship with our partners. We have all the partners that have supported or endorsed this conference, even though it was in a short notice. They have even managed to even give us the blank check. And that blank check is to say that if we are able to cooperate and work together, they will be able to support us. We have our partner, ETG, and we have our partners, African Seeds Group. We have our partners, Sakata, Mayford, and we have our partners, Hygrotech. We have our partners, Sakor Manufacturing. We have our biggest partners. I think I must state that with the ARC, it has been a long kind of a partnership. We started our programs with the research programs for the cassava, and I get a feeling that we're heading somewhere. We should be able to commercialize this cassava very soon. We got the NAMEC, they are our partners here, and we got the National Department of Agriculture, who have joined us as well, and I hope that we will also be guided by that office on how we should function, because we have to listen to our government, what is it saying. We all contribute to our own government in terms of tax, in terms of ideas, and then when they pronounce that the nation wants to implement things in this manner, and we all toe the line. So we are grateful that we are not organizing this as a talk show. Conferences are known very well as the talk show. We don't mind talking, but I think we are now at a point that we are going to imagine this conference with the mandate that moving from now on, we're no more fighting the battle to establish the farm wholesale market, but we are now going to make sure that each rand that we have in our position is able to circulate amongst us to empower our own people. So from here going forward, our partners are saying that, look, they are ready to empower the farmers. I'm not sure whether the farmers are ready to empower themselves. So if we would want to keep the status quo as it is, and it has been since 1994, then it's fine. We can't do much on that one. But those farmers that are saying that we would want to work and cooperate together, we will build together. So we have been given this blank check, and it has been initiated from the department, from the government when they released this, the COVID relief funds, and we participated to supply our farmers with the inputs. It was tough, it was not easy, and then now the solidarity funds came, and then our life began to improve, and then now is the presidential stimulus. So we are on this thing with everyone and trying to rebuild our economy, and there is no other time that we need to take decisions that will guide us moving forward so that we can empower everyone. So with these few words, I want to say thank you very much. This is the beginning of the bigger thing. Our wish is that come next year, then we close the town, and that is going to happen. So I will leave it here and listen to the presentations, and I think we need to take it seriously because all the words that are being spoken are the rulings. And if you don't listen to the rulings, you will violate the rules. So let us listen very carefully, and then let us go to work, and let's have a great day. Tonight will be hosted by the ARC on Cassava Night. So I invite everyone to join us tonight, and then let us have fun again. We had a great night last night, and these 2 nights will remain part of our General Assembly and part of our annual conference. So thank you very much for the support. I will hand it over to the General Secretary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is how we use these things, because you said you don't know. Thank you. And I wish we could flight our agenda so that, because people do not have any copies, we wouldn't like them to move in the dark. I think as we are being helped to do that, we are privileged to have amongst us the Chief Executive Officer of ETG, and we would love to give him an opportunity to give us a keynote address. And please pardon me if I don't call your name correct, and please correct me. May I call over Rajiv? Thank you. A round of applause, please, for appreciation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam, for inviting me, and thank you, Mr. Upa, the chairperson, for giving me this opportunity to speak here today. So you rightly said my name is Rajiv. My surname is all the more difficult to pronounce, so I'll keep it as Rajiv only. I don't want to make the life difficult. So I come from a company called ETG. You can see the name here, ETG Logistics. ETG Logistics, of course, a part of ETG, which is the parent company. And I'll take first few minutes to talk about ETG before I can speak about the agenda today. ETG is a more than 50 years old company in Africa, and against the general perception, it is not an Indian company, it's an African company. Generally people think that ETG is Indian company and we deal in some products from India, but we are an African company. We started our business in 1967 in Kenya. Our chairman, who is of Indian origin, but he is a proud Tanzanian national. He was in Kenya earlier, and now he lives in Tanzania. He is the chairman, founder chairman of the organization. So we are an African company. We live here. We associate ourselves fully with Africa and not an Indian company operating in Africa. So I think I just wanted to emphasize on that point, so that we are seen as a part of you and not somebody coming in from outside. Many of our managers in many of the countries, they live there, they are nationals in those countries. They speak the local language. I tried to speak Zulu, but when I came here, I realized Zulu will not suffice here, and I need to learn a couple of more languages. But yeah, so we are an African company. Our chairman lives for the cause of benefit or improvisation of the life of emerging farmers. So when we started interacting with Mr. Opa, or I would say started interacting with Changa the Great, we found a lot of similarity between what our company wants to do and wants to achieve in Africa and what FABCO is trying to do here. So ETG's core philosophy is to work for the upliftment of the emerging farmers. If you were to talk to a chairman, he won't stop talking about what we should be doing for emerging farmers and how the quality of life should get improved across the continent. So he's of course, as you're not aware, so probably Pawan and my colleague will explain you subsequently more about the company, but we do operate in around 25 countries in Africa. As I said, started in Kenya, moved into Tanzania, Mozambique, Uganda, coming down to Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa, of course, and also in some of the Western countries, Western African countries, Nigeria, or Ghana, or Ivory Coast. So in all these countries where we operate, our core philosophy is work with the farmers locally and work for the improvement of the life of emerging farmers. In all these 50 years of company's history, we have worked very closely. Of course, we have done business, so we are a commercial organization, but we keep the core philosophy of working with the farmers at the heart of our operation. We work with commodity trade, but then we go and reach out to farmers and see what they should be growing. We have a whole lot of agronomists who are there out in the field, who work with the farmers at the ground level to see what should be grown, what is the right crop for the quality of soil which they are operating in, and what is the right crop which can sort of make the livelihood of the farmers better. So I remember a chairman working with in his youth, working with farmers and telling them why instead of only growing maize, which is more of a subsistence farming, go into growing the lentils, which can bring in ready cash at the end of the farming cycle. And not only we educated the farmers, we also worked with them to ensure that we do the upliftment of those commodities and give a market to their produce. And I've been hearing from Mr. Opa since yesterday about the availability of the market for what you produce. So I think I'm happy to tell you that this company which I am representing today has actually worked at the grassroots level to connect the farmers' produce to the global markets. We take out the produce to European markets, we take out the produce to Asian market and to Middle Eastern market. As we speak, we're probably one of the largest traders of commodities like cashews, sesame seeds, lentils, various types of lentils. Then we have not stopped only at that. We also looked at how we can empower the farmers further. So we went into fertilizers, into inputs. So whether it is fertilizers or chemicals or seeds in some of the markets, but fertilizer, which is the largest ingredient in agriculture, we went in a big way into that industry, and we today operate, as I said, in around 20 odd countries where we are importing fertilizers and distributing. And particularly in South Africa, we acquired some time back the brand Kynoch, which is 100-year-old brand here in South Africa. And we are building around that brand. So we are retaining that brand. We have increased their product portfolio by introducing more products which we were selling in other markets. So today, Kynoch, which was already a household brand, we have sort of augmented their product range by introducing other fertilizer brands and other fertilizer products as well. We also work very closely in terms of mechanization. In fact, the team which you are seeing here, and you will hear more from us as we move forward, we have worked with farmers to ensure that instead of instead of cultivating their land manually, they start adopting the mechanization. We have worked at training with them. We have worked at introducing products to them. When you would have walked in, you would have seen the Mahindra range of tractors, which is on display outside. So not only Mahindra, we are looking at other possibilities also. But our focus is that we are able to contribute to the awareness of the farmers to do the mechanization in their agriculture instead of doing it manually. In some countries like Tanzania, I think we started a project called Tractify with Agra, which is one of the agri foundations, and we introduced this product of empowering the farmers in a village who were slightly better off, who could invest into a tractor. We made them buy the tractors, and then we ran a call center to generate leads for them. So this call center reached out to all small farmers who could not afford to buy a tractor, and we checked with them if they were interested in renting out a tractor from this lead farmer. So not only the lead farmer got empowered in the sense that he got an additional revenue stream by renting out his tractor, but also the small farmers who could not buy a tractor, they were sort of empowered that they could rent out a tractor and do the cultivation of their land. So this we did as a part of the project which was run jointly by ETG and Agra. And on the similar lines, we are today introducing a rent-a-tractor model, which I'll not talk much. I think I'll leave the opportunity for my colleague to speak about it. But he'll explain you what we want to do in that project here. So I think the point I started with is that when we started interacting with FABCO, we did realize that there's a lot of synergy between what we are trying to do, not only from business perspective, but also largely from the perspective of betterment of the farming community here. And since we saw that synergy, we started working closely with you, and thanks for all the opportunities. So yeah, I think I will sort of end here, not spend too much of time, and request you to take over again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir. I think all farmers in FABCO, or even outside FABCO, would agree with me that farming without implements and perhaps a tractor, to be specific, it's just like going to write an exam without a pen. So I think these are very good news and music to our ears. Also that, there's an option of renting a tractor. So we are very grateful for this partnership. And we wish and pray that, it will go a long way. And empowering farmers, it's always the best thing to do. Thank you very much. We're moving on with our program. If the next speaker arrives, we will slot them in. But now we're moving on to, my eyesight, to Dr. Mike on sustainable food production. May I please call over Dr. Mike to come and address us. Over to you, sir. And please announce your surname properly. I'm just scared to say people's names and surnames wrong.
Good morning. I am naturally very loud, so I don't think I'm going to need speakers. What I will share with you today is, I think, what research and development would assist in terms of developing food systems and what the role of the ARC in this space. The Agricultural Research Council is an institution that is enacted by an act of parliament. It's a public institution that is established to support the agriculture sector through the development of research and innovation products and services. Therefore, its mission and vision statement, as you can see, are based on research, development, and technology transfer. And it endeavors to excel in that space and provide the necessary service to the agriculture sector. So in that way, I think we aspire to be the premier science institution that would our farmers, our industries, would always look up to when it comes to sourcing new technologies and research products and services. Like any institution, the ARC also have its own research goals and objectives. But as an agricultural research institution, it focuses on crop-based agriculture, livestock-based agriculture, of course, conservation of natural resources, on food safety-related issues, as well as transformation of the agriculture sector. Broadly, all the research we do, whether it's in crop breeding, in crop genetics, in animal breeding, in animal protection, in animal nutrition, in vaccination of animals, all the work the ARC does falls within these categories that we see here. So largely, for any support that has to do with crop-based agriculture, the ARC is well positioned in this space. As we go along, I think I'll try and address the core of my speech, that is, how can we use those research and development spaces to develop a sustainable food system? In order to achieve those 6 objectives that we have seen earlier, the ARC have structured itself into 9 distinct programs. These programs include, there is a distinct crop production improvement and production program, there is an animal health and production program, there is a program for natural resource management, we have a program for mechanization, agro-processing, smallholder agricultural development, agriculture economics and commercialization, training and extension, as well as the obvious administrative and corporate services. So what we normally do is that the ARC is structured in various ways, considering the agroecological and geographic distribution of South Africa to provide those services as best as possible. Zooming into where I belong, that is the crop sciences research category, we focus largely on plant-based technology within the crop production space. And that's the multi-location crop evaluation within the agriculture research system. We have research institutions for grain crops, industrial crops, small grains, soil climate and water, plant health, animal health, biotechnology platform, agricultural engineering, vegetables, animal production, etc., etc. So each campus is situated in a geographically suitable position to address the needs of the farmer in that environment. For example, our tropical and subtropical crops campus is situated in Mbombela, Mpumalanga, because from Mbombela all the way up north and northeast is where the tropical and subtropical part of South Africa is situated, and that's where the need is. On the other hand, if you see our temperate stone fruits, wine, grape, etc. research is situated in the Western Cape, because largely that is where the industry is, and then the campuses are situated there to serve the industry in that aspect. Our grains, small grain crops are situated in Bethlehem, in the Free State, because that is where our wheat and barley production and research environment is. So it is the structuring of the campus is needs-based, and it's not a random placement. That is what we would like to see. But today, I think we're not going to cover all the campuses, but I think I will focus my address largely on the campus that I belong to, that is the Vegetables, Industrial and Medicinal Plant Research Campus, situated north of Pretoria, around the Ruderplaat area towards Moloto Road. In this campus, we do a lot of work based on the mandate crops. When I say mandate crops, ladies and gentlemen, it refers that each ARC campus has a mandate on a certain crop. For example, me as a scientist within the vegetables and industrial medicinal plant research, it is not my responsibility to go and do research on maize, on wheat, or sorghum, and etc., because there is other specialized campus and scientists who are mandated to attend those aspects of the ARC business. So each campus is mandated to do certain businesses, and then our crop-based agriculture within the VIMP, with the vegetable, industrial, and medicinal plant space, is crop production, analytical services, farmer support and training, diagnostic services, high-level skills development. We do train a lot of MScs and PhDs, as well as within the farmers training, we have quite a number of accredited courses that we tailor-made for farmers, extension agents, and or other agricultural practitioners. Also, there are crop-based courses as well. For example, if one wants to train on tomato, there is a specialized tomato production module that is designed in various ways. I think those courses are accredited by the Sector Innovation and Training Authority of South Africa, the AgriSETA, and therefore they are accessible on request. So we would like to encourage the farmers within FABCO and other surrounding to have access to those environments. And if you really want to understand how that is done, I think mostly if you identify your training needs, the Sector Training Authority does provide the necessary funding to cover for those skills development programs. And therefore, they would link you directly with us. How do we do our business? I think this is a very simple 4-step model that we normally use to empower the crop production research, specifically within the mandate crops that we have. First, we look into what are the national imperatives, policies, and needs. Based on that, I think on the first step is we select crops. Essentially, you don't have the resources and the money to do research on all crops, but how do you select a crop? We see the National Development Plan, the medium-term development plans, and the bioeconomy strategy, the NEPA, the bioeconomy, the Department of National Agriculture, the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plans. The government has a multitude of programs. So we select our crops based on those programs such that our research responds to those national imperatives. So when we select crops at higher level decision, there are two aspects. The first is the national priority, what is important for the country, and the second is institutional mandate. When I say institutional mandate, if the government, for example, puts, let's say, a practical example. Currently, cannabis is very high on government agenda because of its deregularization and it's being declared an agriculture crop. The medical value of it has been highly spoken about. Cannabis is of one of the high crop priorities in South Africa. There is the interministerial task team that is looking into how to do research on cannabis. So our campus, by virtue of it being the campus responsible for medicinal plant research, we sit in that interministerial committee and we do develop proposals, run research. We have the license to multiply host germplasm, and we have more than 200 germplasm currently in our gene banks to support the establishment of those kind of research. So the institutional mandate is very important because if, for example, the priorities, let's say, the wine industry, that assignment automatically goes to the Western Cape campus. That is the specialized campus to do those steps. Our next step is characterization. And in any crop research model, you need to know what is in your plant. Once we select the crop, what we do is we profile the crop nutritionally, phytochemically, in a phenotypic way, and genetic. These 4 factors have their own importance when it comes to developing crop for agricultural production. You do the nutritional profiling so that when you select, especially if you're interested in agro-processing, through nutritional profiling, you select the right varieties with the right, for example, varieties with high iron content, with high magnesium content, high vitamin content. Those varieties you select specifically based on laboratory analysis, you multiply those crops, and then those are your target products for fortification in the food industry. You do phytochemical analysis specifically with your medicinal and pharmaceutical and nutraceutical purposes. If the objective is that one, you analyze the phytochemistry of the plant such that you determine what is in your plant. There is phytotoxicity, is there genotoxicity? Do you have the active molecules that are stable within the plant? Is there geographical variation? Does it make a difference where you grow the plant in Limpopo or KZN? Does it affect the chemical composition of the plant? All that background information is done as part of the second phase of the prioritization of phytochemical. Phenotypic characterization is largely for mechanization because whether you are going to use inter-row, tractor operators, and etc., the plant architecture, how the plant grows, and etc., that helps. The first one. The second one, phenotype, is also directly related to genotypes. When you do your genetics, you do phenotypic profiling, growth characteristics, branching patterns, number of pods per plant, number of seed, yield per hectare, and etc. Those qualitative and quantitative traits, you phenotype the plant based on those. Then you go to the genetics, more into a DNA protein level analysis. Then that gives you the full picture. What you get from number 2 is like an information library about the crops that you do research on. Based on that information library, then you move to the third step, that is long to medium term research, where you optimize your agronomic principles and practices. You do breeding, where you create hybrids and you screen genotypes that are adaptable to a particular environment. You also understand the crop pest tolerance, resistance, and susceptibility parameters. What is your risk in terms of crop protection? And then you go do the agro-processing. How amenable are some of those things for processing, and how acceptable, consumer acceptability, as well as stability of certain traits within those things. I think we do the agro-processing research to try and answer or provide information for those aspects. The fourth and the last step is then to package the research product for commercialization. As those of you who were chatting with us a bit earlier in the morning, I think this is where the gap exists. As R&D institution, this is where we normally stop. So at this point, somebody needs to take the product and run away with it, because that is where you do your commercialization, your product development, and the enterprise development, cultivar registration, and you have licensing, and the whole business side of the crops research starts on the fourth step. Naturally, as a state institution, that is where we stop. And then the private sector, organizations such as FABCO, then will take those R&D products and run away with them. But by and large, I think this takes us to the purpose of the day, and that is why we do all of this research, and this is to ensure there's food security. Within our understanding, we define food security as a combination of access, safety, and sovereignty of food. For somebody to be food secure, I think some element of these three has to be fulfilled in order for us to say that we are food secure. When we say access, I think all people need to have access to sufficient food to meet their dietary requirements. This is the definition of access. If we don't meet that definition, then we cannot say we are food secure. When we say about safety, we must ensure that people eat healthy, nutritious food free from contamination and degradation. This is also a requirement for food security. That is why we have a lot of regulations, and some people do some funny things in our food system to make it taste nice, but the long-term effect, there are preservatives that are very toxic. We suffer from cancers and all. I think those are contrary to the definition of food security, because when we talk about food security, we need to try and maintain the natural essence of the food, and then it has to be safe, free from contamination and degradation. It should not cause health hazard to us. And if that is the case, then it is contrary to the definition of food security. The third element of food security is the sovereignty of it. It has to be sovereign in a way that people must have the right to choose what to eat, where to get it from, and how to produce it. It doesn't have to be produced in a prescribed way where everybody has to buy into a particular kind of idea, and then everyone has to fit into. I think that is where South Africa has to do a lot, because there are very limited number of food industries. People hardly have options. The traditional food crops somehow have been pushed out of the food system, and now we are trying to rebring them, reintroduce them. I have a colleague who works in the Asian Vegetable Research Center in Taiwan, and he always says very nice things. But one of the things that he says about the indigenous food system in Africa, every time he writes policy briefs and articles, he refers to them as the lost and found foods. They were there, they were lost, and then we're trying to find them now. Largely because we have unlearned ourselves about the goodness of those foods, and now after unlearning for many years, we are trying to relearn what we have unlearned several years back. So that is the essence of going back into the food system. But before we go into the food system, I think it's also important to ask, currently, are we eating healthy? Because of light, I don't think we could see the picture very clearly, but what this picture shows is that this study was done in Cambridge. They took data from all over the world, and they discovered that it is the tropical belt of Africa, India, Southeast Asia, all the way up to Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. It is those areas that are categorized as healthy eating areas because they have maintained their natural food systems. And they are also less reliant on heavily processed food. So, sustainable food system is not about access, availability, and choice, and etc. But also, the health component also needs to be attended to. If we zoom in this further, the picture is even much worse because this is dietary pattern based on fewer unhealthy items. Those places that you see red are areas that are totally unhealthy and they consume the largest amount of unhealthy food. Those you see, the green ones are the areas that use the largest amount of healthy food. The yellowish ones are those in between. Because there is this thing that when we see things, what happens is that people always think it is a cool thing to really eat takeaways. You go Nando's and there's KFCs and etc., etc. But it's actually a very dangerous thing to do because we can see those people who have brought those areas, who have introduced those food systems, are characterized by heavily processed and unhealthy food system. So therefore, our food sustainability should be based on diversification and a natural way of eating. I think I took these pictures in 2019 in the Gumbu village when I was visiting some of our farmers. And this is a backyard of Mom Rebecca. She is a 65-year-old woman, and I counted about 17 different types of vegetables in her backyard. And she makes money from all of them, and she has about 5 people that she has employed full-time. So ideally, in a rural system, this is the kind of backyard that we should aspire to have. So that there is onion, there was okra, there is 3 types of beans, there was 2 types of chilies, 4 or 5 types of leafy vegetables, you name it. She has tomatoes, she had maize meals, all those kind of things she had in the backyard. So ideally, with smallholder farmer, ladies and gentlemen, we are focusing on our food system. We need to have this kind of approach into that. So zooming in, I'll rush into the next few slides because I think the sustainability issue is to try and address the issues that we have discussed. But what is our campus specifically doing to enable what I have just said? We have a campus that is structured into 4 different research groups. We have research groups that focus on root, tuber, and bulbous vegetables. In this group, we focus on potatoes, sweet potatoes, cassava, samadumbes, onion, garlic, and etc. So what we do is we develop research, breeding, agronomy, protection, genetic resource management. We have sophisticated tissue culture laboratories. The majority of the potato industry, the nucleus material, starts from our laboratories. For the sweet potato industry, it applies the same thing because we normally provide those nuclear material to the industry. Then the commercial seed farmers, they take material from us, they multiply and provide to farmers. We have an industrial and medicinal plant research cluster where we work on a whole range of medicinal and plant industrial crops. This is largely focused on product identification, product development, characterization, And bringing those things, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is where the South African gold is. I think this is the untapped. South Africa is the world's third largest biodiverse country. It has less than 1% of the world's land mass, but sits about with 10.5% of the global plant population. So much has been lost from this continent because of extinction and being taken away as part of genetic erosion. But what is left is still too much for us to manage. So this is an area that one needs to look into a greater depth. The third aspect is our leafy, leguminous, and fruit vegetables. Largely, we focus here on the indigenous food systems. You bambaras, you okras, you amaranthus, you tomatoes and chilies and etc. So this is the area. And the fourth one, obviously, is the farmer support, training, and commercialization. So within these four clusters, we try to develop research and development initiatives. The sweet potato program largely focuses on developing of new varieties. I think about 90% of the varieties that are planted in South Africa are our varieties. We have more than 25 varieties that are already in the market. Currently, about 3 or 4 under being licensed. We have 10 or 15 new varieties that are being under commercial evaluation at the moment. So we are actively developing varieties that are there for the farmers. We have had already spoken to FABCO to encourage them, should they want to license some of them for their commercial use within their members. I think we do those provisions. This, of course, is supported by the whole system. We develop the conserved genetic material, we multiply, do tissue culture systems, do diagnostic services, disease screening. Whatever material we give to the farmers is a disease certified plant. We also have some technologies on sweet potato, on processing. We have individuals that we have trained who are already making sweet potato flours, getting into the baking industry. On the 24th, next week, we have a global workshop on how to use sweet potato, orange flesh sweet potato puree in the baking industry. I think we have teamed up with McCain, the Global Potato Research Institute, SIP, NEPAD, the ARC. We have invited the Department of Health, Department of Basic Education, Agriculture, Trade and Industry, Science and Technology, all state institutions. There is a high profile because we decided to do that project as an outcome of the recent report that was released by the University of Cape Town, where in the last 20 years, South Africa did not make any progress in reducing child malnutrition. Unfortunately, this is a sad news that has been broken 2 or 3 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. Based on the research that was done by UCT, there was no progress in minimizing child nutrition. So this is one way of us trying to address. I think I will rush to the next 2 slides because tonight, as indicated, we are going to have a lot of sessions that are going to discuss on cassava. So I think I'm just going to skip. We're going to look into it as a food crop, as an industrial and climate risk mitigation crop, as a source of industrial potential, and et cetera, et cetera. And we go on how we need to roll out that technology, so I don't want to waste time on that one. Within our indigenous vegetables program, I think largely we focus on collecting, characterizing of germplasm, and therefore we recommend what, for example, with cowpea, we currently have 5 candidate lines that we have evaluated for the last 5 years in at least 12 different localities in South Africa, both as a leafy vegetable as well as for fresh pod vegetables that are drought tolerant, they can be cultivated under rain-fed conditions, and etc., etc. So these are the kind of things that we do within our indigenous vegetables. The potato model is more or less similar to the sweet potato model. We focus on industry demand. For example, if there is a need for a processing industry, we breed for high dry matter content. If the industry needs for fresh fries, like for spa or whatever, for nutrition, for the restaurants, we breed varieties that are suitable for that. If it is for mashed potatoes, I think we breed something that suits that need. So the sweet potato breeding program is largely needs driven. As I said, I think we have a very large program within the medicinal plant research. We have large collections of plants in our gene bank. We are also the pioneers, the first to have developed a large number of propagation protocols for medicinal plants. Because traditionally, South Africa is very reliant on traditional medicine. So therefore, there is massive amount of wild harvesting that is taking place in this country. To minimize those wild harvesting, we have introduced a wide range of cultivation protocols for those medicinal plants so that people can cultivate them rather than continuously to collect from the wild, which eventually is going to be extinct and will have nothing to collect. But what is also important is that we tried, for instance, the African ginger. We planted a few, about 5 or so hectares. Whether you believe it or not, we got a couple of million out of it. It sells very, very expensive. There is a global market for it. Whether you grow Artemisia, whether you grow Hypoxis, African potato, whether you grow the African wild ginger, whether you grow the pineapple flower, Ecomis, the Merwilia. South Africa has got more than 3,000 registered known herbal plants that can immediately go into the market. The devil's claw, for those that are living in the desert part of South Africa, devil's claw, is the one plant, for example, the Germans have registered more than 600 products from. But this plant is native to South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia. It doesn't grow anywhere else in the world. So there are a lot of other plants also native to this environment. We do have various technologies, in vitro technologies, seed-based technologies, cutting nursery-based technologies for propagation. So we have training modules on how to go into the planting and cultivation of medicinal plants. I think that can be also sourced as part of our sustainability strategy. We provide this with a very sophisticated analytical services. I think in the last 5 years, we have invested more than 60-70 million rand in our laboratory equipment. So we do full profiling of the medicinal plants, including their toxicity, the phytochemical profiles, the good, the bad, the in-between, all the kind of chemicals that you would like to identify, so that those who are specializing in product development, then they can pinpoint what they want from the system. I think this is a repetition of what I said. Within the industrial crops plant, I think we focused largely on agronomy and breeding. This is largely limited to cotton, tobacco, hemp, and kennel. I think this is part of the fiber industry that we support. I think all of that is supported by our plant health system, which mainly focuses on pest, disease surveillance, integrated pest management, soil health, as well as diagnostic services. So the next few slides are too scientific, so I will just skip them. And the final thing I want to say is, I think, colleagues, the maintenance and multiplication of our genetic resources. Yesterday, as I was driving to this place, I had about 3.5 hours of meeting online. I was listening to my computer as I was driving. And the reason for that meeting was that there is two opposing things within the system now. On the one hand, last year we have experienced a massive cut for our budget for genetic resource conservation. On the other hand, there is this big drive that says we are losing our genetics, so we must do everything that is possible to preserve our genetic material. So there is a consensus that this is every single citizen's responsibility to conserve and protect the plant resources, so that as much as we are enjoying our life today using those plants, we must never forget the next generation, our children and grandchildren, who are going to be relying on those plant resources. So as part of that, we have a very big program that collects, I think we have more than 30,000 different collections of plant genetics in our, that is within what I manage within my laboratories. If you go to the fruits campus, they have their own collections. The temperate fruits campus, they have their own collection. The plant health campus, they have their own fungal and bacterial collection. So ladies and gentlemen, that is what we do in a nutshell, and with that I would like to thank you. if they have any question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mike. As we are preparing to take questions, I stand to be corrected
Yes.
that FABCO has been invited and offered to sell the products that ARC is developing, but on condition that we get our licenses in order.
Yes.
And we are geared up for that. FABCO will work on that. Definitely, it's a process, I believe. So we should be able to work on that and make sure that FABCO goes forward. As you were, presenting, I actually thought, phew, this is university stuff. This feels like too academic. But, as you talk to what we do as farmers, I realize that much is put technically, but the most important thing is what we ultimately produce. And for us is to, start understanding what is in a plant, so that our people are also exposed to what they are being fed with. Because the saying that you are what you eat, it's very, very important. We can see from what you were flagging in terms of all those countries that are eating healthy and some that are in between and all. May we take a few questions? Clarity questions, comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Let us so to Rekabujisha, English, Africans, ma'am. Okay, can we take at least two more, if there are any, before Dr. Mike can help us answer? Re sana le tše ding dipotšišo tše re nyakang go di botšiša. Okay, may we allow you say
Well, I think it's an important thing. For any crop production, I think the first and logical starting point is to have your soil analyzed. When you analyze your soil, you learn a few things. The first thing you learn is your soil, clay, loam, sandy, loose. Is it suitable for crops that require heavy soil, or is it suitable for crops that require loose, sandy, loam soil because they normally grow underground parts and etc., etc.? That's the first one. And the second one is also your fertilizer recommendation, and what you put in your soil is a function of your soil analysis. If you don't analyze your soil, then, for example, your soil may be naturally rich in calcium. But for you to apply calcium fertilization is a waste of money. It's not going to help. But if you don't analyze what is in your soil, you are not going to learn all those things. So as part of that, I think the soil analysis laboratory is one of the analytical services we provide. It is probably the cheapest service you can find compared to the private laboratories, because it is designed not to make excessive profit, but it was designed to provide service. As I said, we are a state institution. We are not in a business of making big profit, but at the same time, we must also sustain our income. We are not 100% funded, so we have to also generate significant amount of our funds so that we will be able to provide the services that we are mandated to do. So we try to make balance between the two. So to answer your question directly, we can provide you with production guide if you want to go into the medicinal plant cultivation. For example, we could tell you which plant can grow better. For example, if you are living in the Limpopo area, there is no way I'm going to tell you must grow devil's claw. Because 2 consecutive rains and the plant will be rotten, because that plant doesn't like water. It's a desert plant. So we do have those recommendations on paper. We can advise you based on your rainfall distribution, soil type, and etc. Then we could tell you what kind of plants you can possibly grow. I think that is what we can grow. But what FABCO can contribute, I think I'll leave that for them to answer for themselves, because I can't answer questions on behalf of FABCO. But as a member, perhaps if that is not yet in place, what I would like to suggest is that during my early years, I think I worked as development practitioner. That's first 8 years of my career after I graduated from the university. I worked as an extension agent and rural development practitioner. So what we used to do back then was that we established cooperatives. Immediately after establishing, then we go and do needs assessment. We do needs assessment on a household level, so that for our members, each member will have a file, so that each member, the amount of hectare the land they have, the soil type they have, what is the strengths and the weaknesses of their farm, is it, are they wild animals, is the soil poor, is it, all those things, the little things. We document those things, and as a member now, when you speak to her, you immediately go into her file and you say, okay, this is what kind of assistance she requires, because you have done your needs assessment. Based on the needs assessment, when there is a soil test, for example, you can make a copy of that soil test and then you can put it in her file. The reason why we do that is it strengthens your position as an institution. For example, we are human beings. We are here to live, to die, and to live. Those things are natural. So in a situation where there is succession planning, whether the member is alive or not, you will always have information about that particular farm. So I think that is what I will encourage them to do. Together with you, they must do needs assessment and what is required in your farm. And then who pays for it? I think that is the internal arrangement that you guys can do. I hope I've answered the question correctly.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are you answered, ma'am? You? Okay. No, thank you very much. And thank you for... Papa?
Yeah, it's a question of the indigenous tree, the Marula tree.
Yes.
I can remember some years back, the University of Victoria was doing a research in that regard. So I don't know, as IRC, how far have you gone into politically developing a cultivar that could be commercially sold to the farmers? Because Marula tree, especially in Kahura, is very commercial and highly.
Yeah, I think from ARC, our tropical research campus, what we did was, I think so far, not in terms of developing cultivar, but production techniques, there is a work done. But largely, that work so far done is on the processing side. For example, there is a solid research evidence that shows that using the marula cake after the processing for various purposes, it is a very good replacement for protein-based animal feed. It can substitute the one that we import from soybean products and etc. etc. In fact, it's more nutritious than that. So there is a huge value in animal feed with a marula. We're looking into also using as an agroforestry crop for intercropping with other farming systems, where you have your marula trees, and in between your marula trees, you can have your leguminous vegetables and other, or beekeeping, a mixture of crop, animal, crop, and crop kind of combinations, agroforestry systems, where you can have your marula trees and etc. So the research, unfortunately, in South Africa is largely on product development rather than on the agronomy of the crop, because the marula tree happens to grow everywhere, and finding the raw material so far has never been a problem. So perhaps, but it is an important question. I will pose it to our fruit research campus in Nelspruit. I think that's where the guys responsible for that research. I think we shall take it from there. But there is research done on basic propagation methods on marula.
Okay. Another question?
Okay, I just wanted to find out, I heard about the cannabis plantation. I just want to find out, because I did try to read a little bit about it. The requirements and the licensing are too extensive for a farmer. If one is to venture into that, will there be any collaboration, or what will happen?
Yeah, I think that is the sticky situation. Now, the problem is the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Trade and Industry, and the Department of Health. They are not working on the same speed. That is where we are having a problem. Let alone you, as a research institution. We are waiting for more than a year to register 2 cultivars that we have bred. Because this past week we got a letter that says, because of the regulatory complications, the process is taking too long because they are waiting permission from the Department of Health. But nonetheless, there are some movements in that, number one, now cannabis has been categorized as an agricultural crop at the Department of Agriculture, but still it's a regulated crop. You cannot just randomly grow. You still need a license to grow it. But what we can do is, we have now a project with the Department of Science and Technology to try and characterize what is out there with the farmers and how interested are these farmers to grow this crop. So that when you as a farmer come to invest or cultivate the crop, then your application can be supported as part of the research program. So, but ultimately, because this is a regulated crop, the license remains to be an individual one. You as an individual have to get a license. But the good thing is that a license for production is separate from a license for research, a license for laboratory analysis, a license for product development. You cannot have a one-size-fits-all license. So that means it might be easier for you to get a license just for cultivation. You cultivate and you sell raw products. Then, if you want to go into processing, then you have to apply for another license that allows you to do processing. But currently, we are trying to understand what is... There is so much misinformation as well on this crop that there are so many claims that are not ascertained by science. It's spoken like it's a miracle for everything. And as a result, everybody wants to put their hand on it, and then it's driving society crazy. I think that is what I would like to say, that you must put you on the side of caution, that especially from a South African context, because it was a highly regulated crop, there is literally no research on the efficacy of the cannabis population we have in South Africa, other than the traditional users that we know. So currently, we are on the final stage, after waiting for more than a year, of getting our license for laboratory analysis. That would mean we will be able to do phytochemical profiling of the crops, and we can say, okay, these are the varieties for CBD oil, these are the varieties for fiber production, these are the varieties high in THC. THC is a recreational one that is not highly promoted at the moment, because that is a drug aspect of it. The CBD is where the health component lies, which normally you find femininity, only the female plants with lots of female flowers on their bract, that is where you find the CBD. You can't find the CBD on the leaf, even if you find it in a very, very minute quantity. So you need to have those high flowering female plants that contain high CBD content if you really want to go into that business. So that is as much as we know at the moment, but the regulatory process, if you need help with the paperwork, you can get hold of our details. We could also help you. I think we at the campus do provide those basic technical support. As much as we might not give you the license, but we will help you in getting the documentations right so that when you go there, you go with the right set of papers. I hope I've tried to answer your question.
Okay, happy? Any more?
Thank you very much.
No.
I heard you talk about tuberous
Crops.
crops, and what came into my mind is cassava that is very popular in many African countries, especially in the tropics, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Guinea, DRC, Cameroon, Malawi, for example. I am aware that some of these varieties, cultivated varieties, if you like, for cassava, they produce toxic chemicals. For example, cyanide. In your research programs, do you have other programs, related programs, that deal with processing these products? Because cassava is a specific way of being processed to disable the cyanide toxicity. Do you have any related programs for processing and also for technology transfer training in how these are processed, so that at the end of the day, the cassava that we produce, that our farmers produce and eat, is safe?
Yeah, I think there are two things that we need to be aware here. The first one, South Africa, for some reason, I think, abandoned cassava for many years, and as a result, the R&D investment on it was also abandoned. So there was no research on cassava. Now, that's number one. Number two, but now, that's what I said earlier on, that we try to unlearn a lot of things. Now we are trying to relearn them back so that we can use them in our life. But what I can tell you is that we know exactly where the cyanide sits in the tuber. The first step is to remove that part before you do any processing. That's the easiest mechanical way of mechanical removal. You know the root that is in the middle, when you slash the cassava into two, in the middle, just like carrot. You know carrot, there is this middle thing that you normally have the whitish, waterish taste. Yeah, the cork, inside the tube there is, you find it is a distinctly colored middle. That is the only place the cyanide sits. So you cut it, you slice it, you cut that part out before you do anything. That's the safest way that has been used for generations. That doesn't require any investment, any technology. I think that can be done in in-house training whenever we roll the crop out. Number two, for the food cassava, science have advanced a lot, and varieties that are extremely low in cyanide content has been developed. Currently, we are awaiting quite a few of them to arrive. We are importing germplasm as a way of supporting the cassava industry. Since we ventured into this thing about 3 or 4 years ago, the first focus was by the Department of Trade and Industry and Department of Science and Technology to support the starch industry. But then when we went with the starch varieties, which are not nice to eat because they are very dry and fibrous because of high dry matter, as well as some of them also have high cyanide content because nobody really cared about them because they are produced for industrial application, not for food consumption. But when we went to the farmers and then we started planting trials in 3 provinces with more than 20 different farmers and etc., then the farmers' need shifted. They wanted the crop as part of their food crop, especially in 2015, 16, 17, during those years where the rainfall was very erratic. People could see that even in a situation where all crops fail, that crop never failed because it's resilient, it tolerates drought and stuff like that. So then we got a lot of pressure in 2018, 19. People were putting us under pressure, we need this crop for our food security program. Then we started importing germplasm that is suitable for human consumption. High in nutrients, low in cyanide, has been bred for years, so we are trying to import it from IITA in Nigeria and from some of our tropical research institutions in Mexico and other countries. I think we are in the process of importing. Hopefully, I think if not, within the next month or 2, I think we should get some germplasm. So it goes through quarantine, we multiply it and test it, and then it gets available for people. But I think, yes, we have just developed a training manual that includes the processing aspect. That would be part of our farmer support program in the years to come. But what we currently do is that we also send samples of everything we do to analytical labs, to at least 2 laboratories to determine the starch quality and quantity, as well as the cyanide level in any variety. For example, all the samples that we plant with you guys around here, they have been sent for laboratory testing so that we determine the cyanide level as well. So that is the research. So I must admit that it's still infant. It's out of necessity that we started it now. We don't have the 40, 50 years experience that we have on potatoes and sweet potatoes. We are talking based on 2.5, 3 years of experience on the R&D of this crop. So there is a gap, but I'm sure we will address it because I have assembled, I think, a fairly large research staff now. I have 2 senior researchers. One is an agronomist and one is a breeder, and with a full technical support staff for them, as well as we have a team of crop protection experts who are going to all the places that we plant cassava, do the pest and disease analysis and etc. So I'm pretty confident that in the next 18 to 24 months, we should have enough R&D support for this crop. But we'll talk more on cassava tonight, so let us not exhaust a lot of time.
Okay. Thank you. If there are no more questions, I have just one from me. I guess we have a responsibility as farmers, as FABCO, and as part of the members of the community. Just as you spoke about, the medicinal plants, I'll give an example of Artemisia afra, one area where I stay. There are local communities that actually come and pull it out instead of, cutting. And what would be your advice, on a broader scale? What do you do in that case to educate?
I think the best thing is, that is why we call our medicinal plant program, it's not a research program, we call it conservation through cultivation. The best way to conserve, you see, what I don't like telling people is, don't do this. You cannot say somebody to don't do this. Because you must have an alternative before you tell somebody not to do something. So tell them that if you pull it out, that is destructive harvesting. You're going to leave nothing for yourself when you get old and for your children and grandchildren. This is very destructive. But if you do some cuttings or if you do seed or etc., and it's like any garden plant, especially Artemisia, it's not a difficult plant to propagate. It's very easy to grow. So the best thing is to educate farmers to conserve by cultivating. There was this maze with medicinal plants that people believe it's only the one in the wild that has healing power. Ladies and gentlemen, that is totally untrue. It's false. I've done my PhD in plant sciences on medicinal plants. I have done efficacy testing. I have planted devil's claw. I took wild tubers from the wild. I have grown my own plants through tissue culture, and I've grown them in the pot in the laboratories, in the greenhouses. And I have compared the tubers of the cultivated plant with that I have collected from the wild. If you give me, I think my battery died now. If you really give me some time, I think I can share that. It's a published work. It's available in the international literature. What we found in that research is that in some instances, those that we have cultivated have accumulated more bioactive compound than the ones we collected from the wild. So by cultivating, we have done similar studies for African ginger, for pelargonium, for Mewillia, for hypoxis. There is work that is done. So by cultivating, you lose no activity, especially if you are cultivating the plant in its natural habitat. For example, if it grows in Limpopo, and instead of going all over the field and then trying to collect from the wild, if you plant in your garden, one, you have easy access to it. Two, stay assured its biological activity doesn't change. Whether you cultivate it or you grow it in the wild, it's still as effective as it is. If there's difference, it is based on genotype or ecotypes, what we call them, you see sometimes, environmental effect. That's why I said if you bring devil's claw and grow in Limpopo, it might not work, because it does those things because it's a desert plant. The amount of sun requires high sun intensity, very less water content. Maybe that is what it makes it produce those mutis that it grows inside. But if you bring it here, maybe it becomes foolish. Maybe it would just grow leaves and then it might not be effective. But any plant that is grown in its natural habitat, please stay assured you are better off by cultivating it than by collecting it from the wild. By cultivating it, one, you're protecting the environment. Two, you have easy access to it. Three, it can even be a very easy way of making money. I'm telling you, if you have 1 hectare, you are better off planting that 1 hectare with medicinal plant, because you can get, when I showed you that African ginger, we planted it for experimental to test, can it operate in a semi-commercial scale. Then we harvested those plants. We were hit by the COVID, and people were trying to buy whatever they can buy, and they were offering us 400-500 a kg. So that plant still under normal circumstances, there is a market for it of a minimum of 300 rand per kilogram. So no other crop will give you that money per kg. So there is a lot of money, I think, in South Africa, and also it's an area where very little investment, but massive opportunity that the people with a traditional knowledge of those medicinal plants need to invest. When it comes to market, I think we can assist you there. That is where we can link you with people who buy it for various reasons. Yeah, there are European companies. They come and take. We get orders almost every day. So because we can't provide them with anything, we just link them with some farmers. But unfortunately, the demand is too high. The supply is close to zero. So that is an area, if you are really want to make money, one needs to invest on medicinal plants in South Africa. I think that is a very, very lucrative area.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mike. This is noble information. Have we got any more questions? Okay. If we haven't got any more, I'm going to ask us to take 10 to 15 minutes stretch break so that our technicians work on some connections and preparations of going live on the app. Thank you so much. May we please give Dr. Mike a round of applause.
Thank you. See you tonight as well. And we'll talk more. Thank you.